Hapi was the god of the annual flooding of the Nile in ancient Egyptian religion. The flood deposited rich silt on the river's banks, allowing the Egyptians to grow crops. Hapi was greatly celebrated among the Egyptians. Some of the titles of Hapi were Lord of the Fish and Birds of the Marshes and Lord of the River bringing vegetation. Hapi is typically depicted as an androgynous figure with a prominent belly and large drooping breasts, wearing a loincloth and ceremonial false beard, depicted in hieroglyphics as an intersex person. The annual flooding of the Nile occasionally was said to be the arrival of Hapi. Since this flooding provided fertile soil in an area that was otherwise desert, Hapi symbolized fertility. He had large female breasts because he was said to bring a rich and nourishing harvest. Due to his fertile nature, he was sometimes considered the father of the gods, and was considered to be a caring father who helped to maintain the balance of the cosmos, the world or universe regarded as an orderly, harmonious system. He was thought to live within a cavern at the supposed source of the Nile near Aswan. The cult of Hapi was mainly located at the first cataract named Elephantine. His priests were involved in rituals to ensure the steady levels of flow required from the annual flood. At Elephantine, the official nilometer, a measuring device, was carefully monitored to predict the level of the flood, and his priests must have been intimately concerned with its monitoring. Hapi was not regarded as the god of the Nile itself, but of the inundation event. He was also considered a friend of Geb, the Egyptian god of the earth, and the lord of Nippur, the god of grain. Although male and wearing the false beard, Hapi was pictured with pendulous breasts and a large stomach, as representations of the fertility of the Nile. He also was usually given blue or green skin, representing water. Other attributes varied, depending upon the region of Egypt in which the depictions exist. In Lower Egypt, he was adorned with papyrus plants and attended by frogs, present in the region, and symbols of it. Whereas in Upper Egypt, it was the lotus and crocodiles which were more present in the Nile, thus these were the symbols of the region, and those associated with Hapi there. Hapi often was pictured carrying offerings of food or pouring water from an amphora, but also, very rarely, was depicted as a hippopotamus. During the 19th dynasty, Hapi is often depicted as a pair of figures, each holding and tying together the long stem of two plants representing Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolically binding the two halves of the country around a hieroglyph meaning union. This symbolic representation was often carved at the base of seated statues of the pharaoh. Egyptian historian al-Makrizi, 1364–1442, related in his El-Kutat el-Makrizia, the Makrizian plans, that living virgins were sacrificed annually as brides of the Nile, Eris el-Nil, and this has been historically accepted as late as the 1970s, but this claim is disputed by some Egyptologists. Hauron was an ancient Egyptian god worshipped in Giza. He was closely associated with Harmachis, with the names in some cases used interchangeably, and his name as a result could be used as a designation of the Great Sphinx of Giza. While Egyptologists were familiar with Hauron since the 19th century, his origin was initially unknown, and only in the 1930s it was established that he originated outside Egypt. Today it is agreed that he was the Egyptian form of a god worshipped in Canaan and further north in the city of Ugarit, conventionally referred to as Hauron in scholarship. In the Ugaritic texts, Hauron appears as a deity associated with magic and exorcisms. This role is also attested for him in Egypt and in Phoenician sources from the 1st millennium BCE. The best-known text focused on him is KTU 1.100, often interpreted as a myth, in which the Ugaritic sun goddess Shapash implores him to help Plt, a figure of unknown character troubled by snakes. He is also well attested in incantation. In the 1st millennium BCE, Hauron continued to be worshipped in Egypt, but his cult also spread through the Mediterranean, and he is attested in Phoenician and Punic sources from as far west as Sardinia. Indirect references to him can also be found in the Hebrew Bible. The last source to mention him is a Greek inscription from Delos. The Egyptian papyrus Harris mentions Hauron in a role similar to that he plays in Ugaritic texts, invoking him to render a wolf harmless with the help of a knot, and a third deity, identified as either Arsaphes or Reshef, depending on the translation. Elsewhere he occurs as a healing deity. He was also invoked to protect fields, and in this capacity has been referred to as a shepherd. Evidence for both royal and private worship of Hauron is available. However, no accounts of clergy dedicated to him or to Hauron, or Hauron Harmachis, are available, with the exception of an isolate reference to a certain pay, a grain measurer in his service, which is considered difficult to reconcile with the large number of available sources documenting the daily life of ancient Giza. While it is known that he did receive offerings like other deities, further features of his official cult are therefore difficult to ascertain. The limestone doors of a building from the reign of Tutankhamun, located in the proximity of the Great Sphinx, refer to the pharaoh as the beloved of Hauron. Seti I dedicated a stela depicting him during a hunt and praising his military accomplishments to Hauron Harmachis. During the reign of Ramesses II, the cult of Hauron is attested outside Giza for the first time, specifically in Deir el-Medina and possibly also in Pi-Ramesses. A reference to Hauron of Lebanon has been identified in the inscription on a sphinx from the Ramesside period from Tel el-Maskuta II. Hatmehit's name is typically translated as foremost of fish, literally from the words t, chief, head, foremost and myt fish. However, the word myt in Hatmehit's name does not include the fish determinative, which allows it to have a double meaning. The root of myt is mj, which also means to flood. Therefore her name is sometimes considered to mean foremost of the inundation, with a connection drawn between the floodwaters and the fish that come with them. In ancient Egyptian art, Hatmehit was traditionally depicted either as a fish or a woman with a fish emblem or crown on her head. The fish can be directly above her head or presented on a standard, as in the gnome symbol of Gnome 16 of Lower Egypt. Due to that, it is difficult to distinguish images that depict Hatmehit from that of a female personification of the Mendesian gnome. The identification of the fish that is her symbol has been debated, with various researchers identifying it as a dolphin, a lepidotes, or a shilby. However, the iconography of the creature was consistent, with a relatively small head, prominent dorsal spine, and a long anal fin which extends most of the way down its tail. In later periods Hatmehit takes on the iconography of Isis and Hathor, with her fish standard or crown replaced by the horns and sun disk that both shared. Hatmehit was part of the Mendesian triad which consisted of her, the god Banabjedit, and Harpocrates, Horus the child. Her cult was localized mainly to Gnome 16 of Lower Egypt around Mendes, although there are depictions of her found widely around Egypt. She can be found in the temples at Babiat el-Hagar, Dendera, and Edfu, as well as in tombs in Abu Sur and Bahariya Oasis. The first evidence of her dates back to the Old Kingdom as part of the titulary of the official Hetapi, who was called inspector of the estate seat of the goddess Hatmehit of the Great Philae, as well as on the walls of the mortuary complex of Sahur. The only location of a shrine to Hatmehit discovered thus far in Mendes was one located near an ancient harbor. Several examples of stelae inscribed with fish as well as fish-shaped jars with the remains of juvenile shilby were found. These represent votive offerings to the goddess, supported by the beer jug and bread molds that were also found in the area. Outside of Mendes, Hatmehit appears as a deity overseeing the day on 4ak-22 in Dendera and 2-3 in Edfu. On 4ak-28, there is a procession of Hatmehit recorded in the Cairo calendar. This is accompanied by instructions to neither eat nor offer fish on that day, due to Hatmehit leaving Mendes in the form of an Itian fish.